Good morning, everyone. Melissa here from Endo Empowered. So happy to see you all here today. Today, we're talking all about hormone treatments specifically to help you address endometriosis. And I want to welcome everyone that's here with me live. Please say hello. Let me know where you're at. Feel free to ask me any questions. I'm here for you to help support you with any questions you might have on this topic. So before we begin, I want to talk about chamomile tea today because that is my tea of choice. So that is my chamomile. They have a lovely brand here in New Zealand called Puka. I think they have them in the UK as well. But chamomile is known as a carminative, which basically means it soothes things that are overreacting. So anytime there's menstrual cramps, if there's digestive cramping, pain, anything like that, it is super soothing. Also known to help support you with sleep, but doesn't mean you can't drink it in the day. So it's not like it'll make you super drowsy or anything like that. But I had this lovely book by Matthew Wood, and he just describes herbs really lovely. And I just thought I would share some insights about chamomile while we wait for people to arrive. So basically, he describes it as it contains flavonoids, which are cooling and relaxing, bitter sesquiterpene lactones, which helps stimulate digestive juices, volatile oils, mucilage, amino acids, fatty acids, and it's a relaxant. So really lots of benefits in here. And they often describe using it for repetitive pain that becomes difficult to bear, hence why it's used for menstrual cramps. The description is, "I can't bear it," is a common expression. So if you guys have got those, which I'm sure with endo, pain is a typical thing. So if you have that, then that may be something that you find helpful. Right. So I thought I'll just start with the hormone stuff now. So basically, you have a choice when it comes to treatment options with endometriosis. And typically, the choices that are provided are focusing on either putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms, or they're focusing on removing whatever has happened. So kind of working in a past tense scenario. So let's say you have endometriosis and then you are worried about it spreading or whatever. The idea is to take these hormone treatments to stop the endometriosis spreading and prevent the pain and essentially the menstrual cycle, which can be a stimulant for those endometriosis growths. So to explain this, like if you think about the individual cells that are dispersed around the abdominal cavity, those cells fluctuate and build up and disperse just like they would inside of the endometrium. So when you have your period, essentially what's happening is that lining is building up every month, and then that breaks down when your body goes, oh, there's no baby, and then that breaks down, and that's what's your menstrual period, menstrual cycle, whatever you want to call it. Now, the same thing is happening with those cells. So those cells are also bleeding and dispersing in the same pattern as your hormonal cycle. And the idea behind using these things like the contraceptive pill or Mirena or any number of treatments is to stop that cycle and thereby stop the endometriosis from doing that pattern, essentially. Now, there is a lot of debate as to the effectiveness of these treatments. And in many cases, the treatment is actually not beneficial for the overall health of the body, particularly looking at things like Lupron, which there are so many court cases against that whole what they women who are disabled from taking that. So do your research. Mirena is one that I see a lot of women with endo on. And unfortunately, Mirena has sort of the two-pronged negatives with it. The first is that you're essentially sticking something up with a piece of plastic. So this is going up into the vagina, essentially blocking and then releasing hormones in that space. That piece of plastic that is now sitting in your body, like that just, I don't know, that whole idea just freaks me out. But anyway, that piece of plastic can move. And the Mirena has been dislodged, it has moved, it dislodged itself in the walls of bladders and all sorts of places. So that's the first kind of consideration with Mirena. The second is actually the effect of those synthetic hormones. And there have been some remarkable side effects from Mirena, which, I mean, you would never think, like when I think of synthetic hormones and their side effects, I'm thinking more anything to do with estrogen. So maybe your bone health is affected, maybe there's some irritability, like it does affect the brain function, those kinds of things. But I've seen Mirena affect women getting rheumatoid arthritis and diabetes, like it just feels really left field. And these are real cases. So women who I've actually worked with who literally were totally fine and then, went on the Mirena and developed these conditions. So I am very kind of cautious when it comes to synthetic hormones because unfortunately I do get to see a lot of the kind of negative stories because by the time women find me, they've kind of gone on these treatments and then they've gone, oh, these are not so good, or then they go off them and then they want help with their endo by that stage. So I guess the first thing I really want to stress is that you need to really research them. There's a list of things that can go wrong with these, and they are in the little flyer that comes with these treatments. So really research them and make sure that it is really the best option for you. The biggest thing that most of them will do is affect your natural hormone balance because that's kind of what they're designed to do. They're supposed to stop ovulation, stop that cycle. And so by stopping the natural process in the body, you're affecting the natural estrogen progesterone balance in your body. And estrogen is not just about making babies, it's not just for that. It has a lot of other factors. Women really notice this when they actually start going through menopause because estrogen drops off when you go through menopause, and they notice things like they're getting irritable, they get joint pain, their brain's all fuzzy and they can't think clearly. They, start developing things like, struggling to focus. Obviously it affects your bone health. So that is very important, particularly when, if there is a history of that osteo stuff, anything, that can affect your bone health down the track, like, when you get older. These are important things. And there are also some cancers that are unfortunately also stimulated by these treatments. The random ones that I only found out later was that they can affect the natural digestive balance. So the microbiome, which is, your gut dudes, for better term, that live in your gut, they help with breakdown of food. They create a nice environment, and this relates also back to your mood. It affects all sorts of things, your immune system. There's a huge, and that microbiome is, I don't know if you guys have ever had a fish tank, but I always think of the microbiome like a fish tank. It needs to be perfectly in balance. So when you have a fish tank, you want to create an environment where you don't, yes, you clean the fish tank every now and again, but ultimately the fish kind of purify, and the water's all purified naturally through that environment that you create. So it's about, pure water. It's about having a certain amount of oxygen in the water. It's about having plants in the water, and all of that contributes to this kind of ideal environment where there isn't an imbalance, essentially. So things don't die, the fish are good, the plants are good. And this is the same thing that needs to happen in your gut. Now, it's very easy to disrupt that environment, just like it is with a fish tank. So, taking painkillers will disrupt that microbiome. High stress will disrupt it. High sugar will disrupt it. But interestingly enough, the contraceptive pill alters the natural pH of your microbiome. And when I heard this, I thought this was the most interesting thing, because it's affecting the very environment that we need to focus on to really shift endo. Your main focus with endo is actually not your hormones. I know this is like I'm throwing something wacky out there for you guys to like throw you completely, but hormone imbalance is a consequence. It's not the true trigger of what's going on with endometriosis. So yes, there's estrogen dominance in many cases. Yes, it's contributed by that, menstrual cycle. But that is not the key focus to actually addressing endometriosis and its root triggers. We still look at it because obviously there are factors when it comes to hormone balance, but to me, it's a symptom. It's not the true trigger that we look at. And so when you consider that, your approach becomes quite different. And the focus becomes on, why is there a hormone imbalance in the first place? What is triggering that hormone imbalance? And so the gut is a big part of the treatment protocol that we use. The liver is the other organ that we really focus on. Making sure your liver is effectively flushing out and cleaning out the excess estrogens is a big factor in actually getting your hormones back in balance. So let me know if I've given you guys too much information, if I've thrown you completely with what I've just said. Would love to hear from you. I'm going to have some of my chamomile tea. I don't know if you guys can see little Wilson. He's so sleepy. He's snoozing on the couch behind me. So yeah, is there a particular scenario that you guys want me to answer? Is there a particular hormone treatment that you're considering? Like, just feel free to use the chat. No one can see this once it's, gone. It'll be on YouTube, but the comments don't show up on YouTube. So if you feel, embarrassed or whatever, feel free to do that here, because only the people that are on the live will see it. So this space is for you guys to really pick my brain and understand some of these decisions that are ultimately going to affect your long-term health. I have created a downloadable which really gives you the in-depth insights around what these hormone treatments do and how they work, and the long-term effects that they can have on the body. If you want a copy of that, let me know, support@endoempowered.com, and I can share that with you guys. The biggest thing is really researching it properly. There are lots of doctors who don't agree with using hormone treatments for endometriosis because they recognize that it doesn't actually treat the condition. It is just suppressing the symptoms. The biggest thing with it is, when you're pushing a whole lot of synthetic hormones into the body, those are synthetic chemicals in the body that have a reaction in the body. And those are essentially something that is foreign to the body. When something is foreign to the body, it will often not know what to do with it. It becomes something that it needs to deal with. It's something that it now has to like adjust towards. And what I've often seen with women is they go on the pill or they go on these treatments and then they decide, oh, I want to have a baby, or maybe they feel they just want to have a break from it or whatever. And the hormones actually go completely nuts. So typically what I see is women are on the contraceptive pill for many, many years. They were told, oh, you have period pain, go on the pill. And it does suppress a lot of those symptoms. Then they come off the pill because they want to have a baby. And what happens at that point is the estrogen fluctuates massively. So huge fluctuation in estrogens. Because the progesterone actually takes longer to produce. And so you have this estrogen dominance happening in that time, which then flares up the endometriosis. And then all the pain is massive. They're getting all these things happening. And because of that, they then go, oh, I've got to go back on the pill, or I've got to go back on some treatment because this is not working for me. It becomes really tricky when women say they want to try and get pregnant, and now they're dealing with all these imbalances with their hormones. So what I found really helpful is if women say to me, Mel, I want to come off the pill, I want to come off Mirena, whatever it is, I don't want to have those reactions. What can we do? And so my approach at that point is to say, okay, let's work on a time frame, and I typically recommend roughly 3 months before you want to come off the pill. And you actually build the body up. So you build the body up to prepare for that. So you don't just go cold turkey, I'm coming off the pill, I'm coming off these treatments, because what we want to make sure of is that the exit organs, which are basically any organs that help flush out toxins from the body, are working and are optimized and can really make sure that those synthetic hormones are easily released from the body. So yeah, the biggest one is the liver. So that's your key focus, is making sure that your liver is able to flush out those excess estrogens or synthetic estrogens, the xenoestrogens, they're also called, avoiding any environmental estrogens that may be part of that picture. So, not drinking out of plastic or eating out of plastic, avoiding being exposed to anything that can essentially act like an estrogen in the body. So often people don't recognize that there are toxins in the environment which they could easily avoid, which are acting like estrogen, and they tend to have a higher effect. So they don't act in the same, if you think of it like a scale. So normal estrogens might be somewhere in the middle on activity level in the body. But xenoestrogens, they, those environmental toxins or synthetic estrogens, etc., they are way up here in terms of their reactivity in the body. And so that can be a huge factor in then the proliferation, so the continued proliferation of the endometriosis as well. It's a little bit of a loop. So you have inflammation, which is the key trigger. But because of that inflammation, that causes these inflammatory reactions in the body and various cells to activate. And because of that, you have estrogen increase. So it's not the estrogen that's the issue. And that's where my focus is very different. I know a lot of doctors and a lot of naturopaths, they focus purely on the hormone side of it. But to me, that is a symptom. And yes, you will get some relief by using hormonal support. And I'm talking more herbal support. But long term, I don't feel that that is the approach I would take. My focus would be more on making sure that those exit organs, so liver, digestive system, kidneys, skin, any way that things can get out. So when you think of exit, anything that where the body can release something is what we call an exit organ. And as making sure that those are all working and that you optimize them and really support them. So, Kat, what my main focus with endo, yeah, so that I hope that answers your question, Kat, on that. So it's really about focusing on inflammation, not on hormones. Do you guys know what I mean when I say inflammation? Does that make sense? Because I just want to make sure that you guys understand what I'm saying. So inflammation is actually a natural part of the body. It's not like this big evil thing. Like, I think there's kind of this idea that inflammation's bad. It's not bad. It's what happens in the body. It's your body's way of healing. So the easiest explanation I always give is if you cut your finger and, that area becomes swollen, it becomes red, the blood goes to that area. And what it's doing is it's sending all the good guys to basically clean that up, so it's like sending the ambulance to go and clean that up. But in that process, it needs to create that inflammatory response. It needs to have swelling and redness and blood going to the area because that's what draws those guys in. Now, what's happening with endometriosis is there is essentially an overreaction towards those dispersed cells. So there's heightened inflammation. And it's that heightened inflammation, which is not a normal response. So it's like going ballistic. And that's what we focus on. So actually lowering that naturally and understanding why there is that heightened inflammation in the body. So I hope that makes sense. Yeah, COVID would certainly have an effect, definitely, Kat. You are essentially putting the immune system under strain. And any virus will do that. So there are connections with the Epstein-Barr virus. Obviously, COVID is top of mind at the moment, but it's any time that there is something the body has to fight off, you're going to have inflammation because it's essentially trying to heal. It's trying to, it's bringing up all those immune guys to focus on that. And this is why I say to women, it's endometriosis is not a simple condition, but looking at what are those triggers. And for some women, it may be that there's actually some sort of gut imbalance. There might be H. pylori, which is bacteria in the stomach lining. It may be candida that's gone rampant, so candida naturally lives in the gut, but, with high stress, high sugar, that can become out of balance. And then that triggers an inflammatory response. So it could be a virus, it could be a history of trauma that actually was the initial trigger, so there is a link with women who've had a big fall. So if there's, if you've fallen off a horse, or you've did ballet or gymnastics or whatever, that is a big fall. That's a trauma on the uterus, and that therefore triggers an inflammatory response. So there are so many factors that can cause that and can be a trigger for that. And that's why we look at everything and we consider all the actual trigger points of that. So I'm just going to report this person because it's not really appropriate. So yeah, now in terms of synthetic hormones, this is the thing that's sort of the caveat here. I was on the pill for I think it was 7 years or something like that. And I still had pain. And the biggest thing it affected was my digestive system. So, when you affect the digestive system, you then affect absorption. You then affect the ability for your body to get all the tools. I hope you guys know what I mean by tools. So it's vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, blah, 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 all the stuff that you're supposed to get from your food. It affects your ability to absorb those. Now, when you're not getting those, the body is not running optimally. And so there's long-term consequences here. Now, because I was on the pill for so long, that affects your digestive system and the natural microbiome in that process for that extended period of time. And the side effects, they call it side effects, are actually signals that your body's not happy with this. There are nutrient deficiencies happening which are causing those side effects. There are all those things that they talk about, like gaining weight, getting bad skin, having irritability, and all those things. Those are there's a reason that your body shows you those things. It's because it's like there's something happening here. You're triggering an imbalance in various aspects of the body. One of the weirdest things that I had was I had dry eyes, like really dry eyes, to the point where I remember going to see an eye specialist and him saying to me, I can literally see sand particles on your eyeballs. That's how bad it was. I couldn't actually, in the mornings, I couldn't drive because any kind of bright light would really glare and really hurt my eyes. And I remember having to just literally close my eyes. I could not, even use my eyes at all. And I still think that has, sort of had effects on my eyes because I seem very, very sensitive to any kind of bright lights, or if I sit on the computer for very long hours, but it's because the contraceptive pill has an effect on the mucilagenic areas of the body. So when you think of mucilin, it's the slimy stuff essentially that is all over your body. So, your eyes and your nose, down your eustachian tracts, your guts, all over your body produces this mucilage stuff to protect it. It's like a moisturizer essentially on the inside. And the pill has an effect on that. And that's why it'll also affect the gut, and why you have these weird, often side effects from it, because that literally went away once I went off the pill. So, it's very, very interesting. So yeah, and then, Lupron is the biggest one that gets really pushed onto women. And there is an entire Facebook support group on the side effects and really detrimental effects of that. So really check out some of the stories. They're horrendous as to what this drug has done to some women. And it's, for some women, they never recover. There are women who say it took them a year to recover from the side effects. Things like joint pain, and there was one story of a woman, she shared how she literally became disabled from using it once. So just be really, really careful with some of these treatments. Other ones are things like danazol was one that I also used. And this is the thing, guys. I used a lot of these, so I've been there and I kind of get the sort of feeling of, well, I want to go down this medical route. I really want to make sure that I'm supporting my body in the best possible way. You really want to um, get what you believe is the best treatment for yourself. And um, by following this advice, unfortunately, I found myself in a worse position and very frustrated and very kind of let down, because you think you're doing the best thing. You're going to go and see a specialist, you're entrusting this person to look after you. And yet the long-term side effects of these drugs were not discussed with me. I was not, privy to all of the information. And so there is this feeling of why, and I think the hardest thing for me was actually when I realized that it was sort of very much feeling very isolated in my decision not to use those and my decision to try a more natural approach, because it's not kind of, like people have this thing like, well, this is a serious health condition. It needs to be treated. You should go down the conventional methods because, these are experts and trainers. But then when you actually start reading the flyers of what comes with these treatments, if you actually start researching how this has affected other women, it's just really horrible. Like, you just can't believe that this is what's offered. And I think that was the biggest frustration I remember feeling, is like, because I went on the first treatment I did was Synarel, which is essentially you shoot this thing up your nose. And I don't know if you guys were at my other live, but I shared the story with you on that one. But I did 6 months on that and I loved it. It was like the best treatment ever because it stopped my periods completely. Like, I had no periods, I had no pain, I had nothing. And I was like, this is fantastic. I'm loving this, because before that, I was literally in pain every single day. And I remember going back to my doctor and he was like, look, I'm sorry, but we have to come off this now. And I was like, why? It's like the best stuff ever. I was so easy. I just shoot up my nose. It's like no issues. I have, there's no problem with it. And he said, no, unfortunately, it can have long-term effects on your bone health. And I was shocked because I didn't even know. Like, I was not even, I was 20 something. I didn't even look at the flyer. I just trusted my surgeon completely. I entrusted him with my body. And I was like, yep, I'll do whatever you say, because he was an expert. So I thought, well, I'm in capable hands. And I remember just feeling really hurt by that, just really like let down that he hadn't told me about that and that I wasn't informed about the side effects. And then proceeded to go on to danazol, which I just had spotting the entire time that I was on that, and I was on that for like a year. Then I put the one in my arm. I can't remember what that's called, and I tried that, same thing. Then they wanted to put me on the Mirena, and I just looked at that device and I was like, I don't want that in my body. No, thank you, So, yeah. And I guess the challenge is that we are then going against the mainstream. Once we actually start doing our own research and we actually start researching how these drugs affect women and the long-term consequences of them, it becomes really scary, because now it's a decision of, well, do I tell my doctor no? Do I go against the system and refuse this treatment? Am I really making the best decision? And I think something has to change, because these treatments aren't effective. They don't actually treat the endometriosis. They create a whole lot of imbalances and long-term issues that ultimately, ironically, affect your ability to correct endometriosis. And I can talk about that more if you guys want. But you're not actually addressing the endometriosis in that process. I was really reading I was reading about this doctor actually last night, and he was so many doctors are now really anti-hormone treatments, and because they recognize that they're not helpful and they don't actually treat the endometriosis. So, where does that leave you? And that, I guess, is the biggest question. What do you do from here? And I guess it is a personal choice. It is something that you need to decide for yourself. But my biggest advice is do your research, and really make sure that you're aware of some of the risk factors. I feel that we entrust a little bit too much into our surgeons and doctors. Like if they say, "Oh, take this," we just kind of go along with it. I don't know how good you guys are. I was terrible with that. I was literally, yeah, okay. You think I should jump off a bridge? I'll do that. Okay. Because I was in so much pain. I just wanted it to go away. So, yeah. So if you guys feel that way, let me know. Like, feel free to share in the comments. Yeah, I don't know what is wrong with this person, why they keep sending me silly messages. Don't care about them. Yeah, so let me know what your thoughts are if you guys have any insights or questions about any of this. Are any of you sort of thinking about going on some kind of hormone treatment at the moment? Where are you at with it? Like, what are some of the concerns? Let me know what you're thinking, or if you have any questions. Yeah, I really want to help give you kind of the in-depth insights that I can. Okay, well, yeah, so coming back to kind of sort of the insights around how these treatments, essentially how they are used, and then kind of looking at your options. So what they're trying to do is essentially stop the fluctuations of the menstrual cycle, thereby causing the endometriosis to grow further. And I guess, like I said, my focus wouldn't be on that. My focus would be, well, why is there an overreaction by the immune system towards those cells, and working on that. Um, the biggest thing with endometriosis is understanding that everything in your environment plays a part as to how that endometriosis reacts and fluctuates and grows and creates pain. So it's not one singular thing. It's not, oh, I'll just avoid toxins and then it'll all correct itself. It's not one singular thing like, oh, I'll just treat the virus or, any kind of history of viruses and support my body that way. It's really about supporting your body from all aspects. And that's essentially what a holistic approach is. So, as a naturopath, that's the approach we take. So you look at what are you putting into the body as a source of fuel. So this is not like follow this diet. Like, I'm really very anti that. I'm quite anti going on a specific type of diet in an aim to heal, because that is not the reason that they work. The reason they work is because you're shifting your focus to more nourishing foods in most cases. It's not about paleo or keto or vegan or whatever. It's not about that. It's about, what are you choosing that is nourishing the body? And here's the cool thing, okay? So when you choose foods that are nourishing for the body, like 90% of those foods are anti-inflammatory. So it becomes a no-brainer. Like, you're not having to try and decipher what you can and cannot eat. There's none of the stress around your food and avoiding and, oh, I can't have that. And because that's stress. And stress like that is unfortunately a contributor to inflammation. The minute you have anxiety around anything, particularly something like food, which unfortunately has become very rampant with all these restrictive diets, you're triggering an inflammatory response in that stress reaction towards, all of that. So when we shift towards foods that are nourishing, and our focus becomes about, how do I really replenish my body with the maximum amount of minerals and nutrients and vitamins and all of those cool things that are natural forms in food. And this is the other big thing I really want to stress. It's not just, please don't think that you can go and buy a whole bunch of supplements of all the vitamins and minerals that you need. They're synthetic. Your body needs the real thing in its original form. That's what we were designed to eat. And so taking a bunch of synthetic stuff, which honestly, when you actually research that and you figure out where these things come from, you probably wouldn't want to have those either. They're not from the natural source. And when you eat well and you have nourishing foods, you don't need those things because your body is getting all the replenishment that it needs. So that's the first thing, is really looking at, are you really focusing on foods that are nourishing the body to help rebalance, to help lower that inflammatory response? And indirectly, you're helping all these things. You're helping hormone balance just by eating better, because particularly the B vitamins are critical for hormone balance. If you have low folate, which is what's in green stuff, your liver function is going to be inhibited, which means that your hormone balance is going to be inhibited. But it's too complicated to go into, what about this and what about that supplement and what about, why complicate it? Just eat to nourish, and you will naturally have what your body needs to feel well. Then from there, you look at, okay, what is the other pictures in terms of really supporting your body? How else can you really reduce that inflammatory response and thereby lower those endometriosis growths? A lot of the time, the real inflammatory triggers are emotionally based. So a lot of the time there's some kind of emotional trauma that needs to be looked at, some kind of stresses in your life that are essentially a trigger for more inflammation and that response towards the body. Interestingly enough, when we look at what's happening, I actually think that there is an autoimmune component to endometriosis because the body is reacting to those cells like they're a huge problem. And autoimmune implies that there's, an overreaction towards cells in the body. So, yeah, so when we look at it that way, it's kind of, why are we fighting with the own cells of the body? Why is there a resistance towards the own cells of the body? And um, there's an intolerance of self. So when you think of it for yourself, what comes to mind? What intolerance to self are you thinking of? You know, is it that you don't love your body? Is it that you don't love that part of your body? Is it that there's aspects of yourself? And so that is a big part of that environment that we need to really support ourselves and really heal from all aspects, not just the physical body side of things. So, yeah, so that's, there's lots to inflammation and really reducing inflammation and ultimately making that your key focus rather than necessarily the synthetic hormone aspects or using those to treat the condition. Alrighty. Well, since there is no questions today, or no, is there anyone who would like to share their own story or have specific questions relating to a particular treatment that you're looking at? Okay, well, I'm going to leave it there then. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you got some insight on this. If you would like to get the informed consent guide, I will create a space for you guys to download that. Um, Otherwise, just send us an email on support@Endo Empowered and I'll be happy to share that with you. Wishing you all the best in whatever decisions you make. Make sure you do your own research and really look into these things and making sure that I can help you and help you prevent the years of struggle that I went through. Thanks so much. Bye.